What's up? My name's Glueboy. Welcome back to this 40k series. And dang, y'all like the first episode of this. Nice. Though also, I despise doing like YouTuber shit. Like I hate it. So this will be the one time I really call for this. But I'm considering focusing more on lore and not really talking a crazy amount or as long, like the actual rules and tabletop and competitive play for like the factions. I don't know. Let me know what you want to see more of. You want a nice even split, more lore, more competitive stuff. Just tell me in the comments. All right, that'll be like one of the only times I ever do that. So let's get into our topic for the day. We're going to talk about one of the most fun factions in 40k. We're going to talk about the Orks. Orks. Imagine if that like weird mushroom in your backyard and your average UK football fan had a kid, and that's his faction. Biological war machines made a long time ago by the old ones, right alongside the Eldar. But unlike the Eldar, they are like the exact opposite. But Eldar are smart, psychically gifted, great at just making insane tech and societal advancements. Orks are dumb, physically terrifying, and they're all virgins. Orks are essentially just like biological war machines genetically made to be amazing soldiers, as that's what they are. They are hard-coded to their DNA to fight, and that's all they care about. And it's interesting because an orc in any fighting situation never truly loses, because they win the fight, yeah, they won, awesome. They lose the fight, that fight was hard, but we still fought. That's all they care about. There's a really fun quote that I think you'll see often if you're looking into orc stuff, where there's an Eldar philosopher talking about how orcs are kind of like the pinnacle of creation to some extent, because they have no strife, no real issues in their society. They just want to fight and are happy to do so. And also, they are a giant menace in the universe. There's a lot of orcs. Pretty sure orcs have like the highest population of any of the factions, maybe aside from like the Tyranids. But even then, like the orcs have been here from the beginning of the universe. So they've spread. An orc like empire spreading is like nonsensical, because they kind of just get in a ship, pick a direction, and hope they find something, and they land. And a problem with orcs is that they're all fungus, like I mentioned. So if an orc lands on a planet, that place is infested. There's orc spores now all over. And God forbid you start trying to kill them. As you kill an orc, the spores spread more and create more orcs. So if an orc is on your planet, you're going to have an orc infestation for the end of time. So good luck dealing with that. But yeah, orcs, all they want to do is just find a cool enemy and beat its ass. I mean, a really good example is an orc war boss by the name of Tuska Demon Killer, who, after fighting a bunch of demons, is now stuck in the warp in a gladiatorial arena created by Khorne in the Khorne's realm in the warp, where he's eternally fighting demons. And Tuska thinks this is the coolest thing ever, because he's fighting eternally. That's all he wants. All of him and his boys are having the time of their life. And Khorne is too, so it's this nice mutually like beneficial arrangement of just horrible murder. It's pretty cool. Orcs are kind of also a comic relief faction in 40k. Well, they serve two kind of roles. They're a really good chaff army to throw at like the characters in whatever story you're telling, because orc deaths don't really mean much, and orc victories are devastating to the faction. Orc victories are devastating to certain parts of the universe, so they're kind of just really good gimme villains. You just need some villain in your story, throw orcs in. Besides, they're also just dumb fun, because orc lore and just how they are is all goofy. Their guns are shootas. Their bladed weapons are choppas. They all talk in a really like ridiculous, like stereotypical British accent. Like it's no joke. They really do just act like roided out sci-fi versions of British football hooligans. This is reflected in the orc religion, where they worship two gods by the name of Gork and Mork. And I promise they're very different from each other. Because Gork, he's brutal but cunning. He'll run right up to you and just bash your head in as hard as he can. But Mork, he's cunning but brutal. He'll wait till you're not looking, and then he'll hit you real hard. You know, perfectly different gods. Also, they fucking hate each other. They're fighting constantly. And as well, they're constantly listening over orcs in the battlefield. And if you pray to the wrong god, you might pray to Gork one day to grant you victory, but Mork's there listening. And he gets real upset. So he just explodes you. Because how dare you pray to Gork? Mork's here. And vice versa. Where, like, legitimately some spells that the Psychers in the Orc faction have called Weird Boys, they have a bunch of fun spells, and they can literally summon a giant foot of Gork or Mork to just crush some enemies across the way. Real goofy. So orcs, they're real goofy, because all orcs want to do is kick ass, like I've said a few times. And this leads to some really fun interactions with some of the other factions, as, you know, they obviously have no other allies. And also, a good way I can describe how certain factions view the orcs and certain characters view the orcs is imagine Taskmaster from Marvel. Taskmaster can perfectly mimic another person's fighting style and use it to anticipate how they're going to fight him. Except for one famous character, Deadpool. He can't anticipate Deadpool at all because it's Deadpool. There's a character named Imhotep the Stormlord of the Necrons, famed for being one of the best, if not the best, military strategist in 40k. Man's an absolute genius, and it doesn't help that he's a robot with, you know, computing and can give directions in a millisecond. He despises fighting the orcs, because how do you plan against a faction that also doesn't know what it's going to do? Because a lot of orc plans are, we'll just go kill it. We'll just run right at it, and something will happen. So you can't plan around it because your opponent doesn't know what they're doing. Same with Deadpool and Taskmaster. And a story I'll mention before moving on to one of their main bits is the story of Grit's Guts, an orc war boss who was traveling through the warp on his way to a campaign. He pops out of the warp and he sees a flagship in front of him. That's his flagship, as he somehow found his way back in time before he went to the warp. Because traveling through the warp, time and space don't really mean anything when you're going through it. And seeing it, he found his past self. Now, Grit's Guts had a gun that he really liked. It was his favorite shooter. And the problem is, this other Grit's Guts, that was his gun. No one else can have his gun, that's his. So he kills his past self, takes his gun, and now he's got two of them. And he's ecstatic about it. For anyone who has a surface level knowledge of 40k the orcs, there's one part you've probably been waiting for me to talk about. And that is the idea WAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAAH is also what they call a giant crusade, where they're going out to go crump some fools in the next area. But another thing it refers to is the orcs' latent psychic energies. While the Eldar are powerful with controlling their psychic energy, orcs have this like communal psychic group thing, where if enough orcs believe something to be true, it becomes true. A pretty basic way this comes about is the idea of colors for orcs. Now, red, that's a fast color. You paint your car red, it's gonna go way faster. Blue, that's a lucky color. You paint your equipment that, you're more likely to not get hit. Stuff like that. As well, there's some goofier versions of this, as there's a few good story examples I'll give. An orc war boss, which a war boss, by the way, is the biggest and toughest orc. Orc hierarchy is based on who's biggest. An orc war boss is in his truck, driving to the battlefield with all of his boys in there. And the car suddenly stutters to a stop and stops working. An orc driving the car turns and says, "Boss, we're out of gas." And the war boss gets angry, says, "No, we didn't. I filled it up myself before we left." And he kills a Gretchen to prove his point. And all the other orcs being like, "Damn, that's a good point. All right." They turn the car back on, goes right on. As the boss wouldn't lie, he put gas in it. So it's obviously got gas. So it keeps going. Another fun example is a story of some orcs meeting in space. An orc starship kind of broke down in the middle of space. Pretty screwed, they were trying to fix it. All went out in their spacesuits and started fixing the engines. And another orc ship kind of went by. In a moment of probably rare kindness, maybe they're the same clan or whatever, they stopped, hailed over the radio, "Hey, you know what? We got some mech boys in our midst. Let's go out and help you fix your engine so we can go kill this planet nearby." And the other orcs come out across the way, traveling, going through space to go fix the engines. They weren't wearing any spacesuits though, but they were perfectly fine, just kind of hanging out until these orcs, seeing this, confused, one of the orc boss kind of radios over to the other ones like, hey, why are you doing that? Don't you know you need spacesuits to live in space? All of those orcs without spacesuits stopped, realized, and then decompressed and died. That's how it works. Orcs are powered by their stupidity. And if they were smarter, they couldn't utilize this power as well. And a lot of their stuff would stop working because orc, like, medicine and technology is held together by like spit and duct tape. It should not work, but it does because the pain boy, when he's cutting off like an arm and shoving just a power claw in there, is like, that should work. It's worked before. You know what? This guy has brain damage. I'm gonna just throw some metal plates in there. That'll fix it. And it does. Orcs building all their cars and stuff kind of just throw in parts and assume it's gonna work. Everyone else thinks it works because the mech boy knows what he's doing. And keep going. But with a lot of that out of the way, which apologies, a lot of that is just orcs like to fight and orcs are dumb. That's a lot of their lore. It's a lot of their stories. That's one of the reasons they're so fun. But we're going to go on to some of the characters now.
You sent me a message first, yeah? I live in Smethwick, Birmingham. If you want to fucking brawl, come down Smethwick Hospitality. I'll come out my house and I'll break your fucking legs.
But the first character we're going to talk about is probably one of the current like big bad orcs for the other factions. It's Ghazghkull Mag Uruk Thraka, the prophet of both Gork and Mork. After Ghazghkull kind of got like shot in the head a couple of times, taken over to a pain boy to get fixed, pain boy decided, hey, let's get a little crazy with this one. Started shoving in metal and electronics in Gaz's brain. So when he wakes up, he's either, psychically linked to his gods, Gork and Mork, or the man's just fucking insane. He receives a vision from both Gork and Mork saying, you are the one who will lead the greatest WAAAAAAAAAAAAAAH ever known to orc kind. And it's like, all right. Immediately, right after doing so, took over the clan he was in and began to take over other clans. And eventually, spreading his way into space, finding a space Hulk, which, by the way, is a ship or a bunch of ships that got lost in the warp, fused together, filled with all sorts of horrible, nasty creatures, and in general, crazy, dangerous thing to inhabit. He took over this space Hulk, traveled his way through the warp, fighting demons throughout the way, having a great old time, gathering other orc clans his way as he was leading a great WAAAAAAAAH, unifying all these clans and tribes. And the other orcs were like, hey, a direction to be pointed in? All right, sure, better than what we're doing now. And made his way to the planet of Armageddon. Now, Armageddon, for some people might get this reference, I kind of feel like Armageddon is kind of like Baldur's Gate in like Faerun D&D lore, where it's just a place where bad things just keep happening there. Not a lot of like crazy reasons for it, just keeps happening. And I'm not going to totally get into the War of Armageddon. A lot of the point there is Ghazghkull's like first real encounter and led a giant fight. It's where he first really showed up. And since he's just been going around causing a lot more problems, the man is like huge. I'm pretty sure he's the biggest orc like alive right now. It's insane. I feel like this is a bit of bad form, to be completely honest. I'm probably not going to repeat this very much. But I'm going to talk about a non-orc character for orc characters. I have a good reason to do so, but this is going to be Commissar Sebastian Yarrick, who is the guy who basically like was the reason Ghazghkull couldn't really take over Armageddon when he invaded. Because Yarrick is a terrifying dude. He is a commissar for the Imperial Guard. And the commissars are essentially, I'm playing a little video for you. That's what they're like. They're kind of equally willing to shoot the enemy and shoot their own men. They're not, following orders. But Yarrick essentially proved himself during this Battle of Armageddon to be the meanest, baddest human to the orcs. Now, for orcs, humans are really weird and lame because humans have all these reasons for fighting. They keep having causes and people that they're ordering around. That's all weird. In fact, it's actually an orc insult to call something human or umi, because that means it's basically like pointless. and unnecessarily complicated, like humans are. But Yarick killed an orc war boss, getting one of his arms detached in the process in a pretty impressive way. So a bunch of orcs got like terrified. He took that guy down as Yarick like ripped off the power claw of the orc's like bionic arm and attached it to himself, showing he's better than this orc. And as such, has been developing this reputation that he's now like an honorary orc to them, as the orcs believe, hey, nothing can kill Yarick. And as such, the man won't die. He's like the stop praying for my grandpa, he's just getting too strong meme. Like that's kind of him. The orc claw works like a bionic arm. It shouldn't, but the orcs believe it to. He also heard a rumor that the orcs believe that he had like one of his augmetic eyes. He can kill an orc with just a stare. So he decided, you know what? I'm gonna get a fucking laser eye. Just so I can like prove them right. Like, yeah, I can kill you by looking at you. And right now he's kind of like a nemesis for Ghazghkull, as they're both in this like conflict where they just want to kill each other. Yarick came out of fucking retirement to go kill Ghazghkull because the job wasn't done. And all these other orcs going around being like, respect that man. That man's tough. He's like an orc. And the only other person, to my knowledge, that the orcs respect is the fucking Emperor of Mankind. Because obviously, he's the strongest human. He's the one getting all these humans to fight for him. He must be tough. But with all the characters out of the way, we're going to go right to the rules of the faction.
We've been writing red because red makes you go faster. So our boss said, oi, maybe it makes your kids learn faster. So as we wrote in red, and now we smarter, and we almost stopped fighting to contemplate life, but it got Barbog all depressed and he cramped himself, so now's the boss says we can't read no more.
So first things first, before I go totally into a lot of the rules and how they're playing, I'm going to tell you about the orc sub-factions you can play as, called clans, spelled with K. First up, you have the Bad Moons, who are the richest and most show-offy orcs. They got the best war gear, everything's painted gold, the best color, because other than green, because, you know, it's shiny. Then we got the Blood Axes, the sneakiest orcs. Now, by orc stealth, don't picture like Sam Fisher level like stealth ops. Imagine an orc sitting in a barrel, waiting until you're looking the other direction, and then they run out screaming. Like that level. But a lot of the orcs don't really trust them because, you know, that's a stealthy orc. That's not orky. The Death Skulls are the luckiest orcs because everything they have is painted blue. Everything. And as well, they gotta paint things blue because they keep stealing all their shit from the other orc clans. So, you know, they have the excuse, if that's not yours, it's blue. Was your thing blue? No, our stuff's blue. Then we have the Evil Sons, the fastest orcs, because everything they got is red, including the bullets that they shoot. They paint all their bullets red, so the bullets go faster. The cars go faster, and it does go faster, like I mentioned before. Just speedy orcs. Then we got the freebooters. Just imagine an orc pirate. That's it, it's an orc pirate. Whatever you'd picture in your head, that's them. Then we got the Goths. The Goths are Ghazghkull's clan. They are the biggest and meanest orcs. They're a big fan of the idea of the green tide, which is just, let's throw as many boys as we can at a problem and just kill it. And right now, they're very killy in the tabletop. They're doing really well right now. Then we got the Snakebites. They're a bunch of like orc boomers, because there's like all this new fancy tech stuff. Ugh, it's not orky. I'm gonna ride on my squig, stab a dude with a pointed stick, and that's perfectly fine for me. That's all they are. They also just are constantly giving the other orc clan shit because your mechs and such don't understand the real way to be an orc. So the orcs are an incredibly fun faction to play. They have a lot of interesting rules, some of which were a little busted when they first like dropped, but that's typical for 40k factions. They're the strongest the month or two after the book drops. But they had some fun stuff. Like a big thing you're going to note is the idea of a Daka weapon. A Daka weapon has two different shooting profiles. One of which, the first value is shooting at half range, second value, full range. And you're going to be shooting a lot when you're using guns. Orc weapons shoot a lot, but don't hit really well. Orcs hit on 5s when they're shooting. Because an orc doesn't care if they're accurate. They're just really excited to be shooting. You know, who cares if like I hit the target? I'm having a great time. So why would I actually sit and aim? That's boring. As well, orcs can declare a WAAAAAAAAAAAAAAH during the game, where you get an effect that happens you could declare the WAAAAAAAAAAH at the beginning of a turn. You get an effect, and then the next turn you get a different effect, and then it ends. There's two types of WAAAAAAAAHs. There's the regular one and the speed WAAAAAAH, unless you're playing with Ghazghkull. Gazgul can call the Great Waaagh, which is both of them at once. And the Waaagh specifically, when, the Codex first came out, was terrifying. A lot of games kind of ended at like turn 3, like out of 5. It was a little much, a little crazy. Which, speaking of, right now, the Orks received a few nerfs and some new faction books come out. So right now, in the current season, they're kind of like, middle. They're doing well, and they're effective. The problem is Orks just aren't great at scoring secondaries in the current season. And also, like, they're in a bad spot where just the few of the top performing factions, the most played factions, kind of counted them in a way. So not fully their fault, unlike Custodes, who got, still upset about that nerf. But when it comes to making your list, there's a few units. Like I mentioned, Gazgul is terrifying. He is a scary unit, but he's not widely used as much as you'd think. That honor goes to the Beastmaster on Squigosaur. This guy is fucking terrifying, especially that Squig he rides on. That thing, if you roll well enough, you can kill the Primarch Rabute Gilliman very easy. When you pair him with the Warlord trait, Cunning but Brutal, can you see why this would be a problem? It's a big problem. I've fought this. It sucks. It's really fun. It's a fun combo, but it hurts. Another character in 40k where getting into combat means that thing is dead. Typical, with a lot of scary units. When it comes to like the current meta picks for a lot of units and such, it's kind of all over the place. I see one thing that's been performing pretty well is Goths throwing a lot of bodies at the table, like just a lot of models, because a lot of models on the table, you can really choke out your opponent, do really well. But also there's a nice mix up of some of the bigger, like fun models, some of the fast, like helicopter models, bikers, stuff like that. Honestly, just go through, if you really care, go through like the top performing lists with like what's been winning at tournaments, go through the Codex or Wapedia, read up on the units you think are fun, because that's, in the end, the most orky thing you can do. Bring those models you think would just be a good time to throw at your opponent and just, kill the enemy models. So what's more orky than that? But yeah, that about wraps it up. Orks are an incredibly fun faction. I think you'd be hard-pressed to find a person who doesn't like the Orks in some aspect, as, they fit lots of roles. Comic relief or terrifying green horde that's going to go mess up your favorite characters. But hey, But I recommend playing the Orks. I personally don't have an army with them. They're an army I'd like to try at some point. Just I don't have the money because they need a lot of models and a lot of kits to bring. I'm too broke right now to start another army. But yeah, that about wraps it up. Like, subscribe, do all that stuff, comment. See ya.